Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today for our training webinar. There are two of us here today, myself, Nicole, and my colleague, Alex. Alex is part of our customer success team, and he trains new customers to make sure they're comfortable using BigRoad. We'll be running the webinar together. The ELD mandate is here, and we've turned on the ability to enable ELD functionality with DashLink and added some new ELD features to the BigRoad web app and mobile app. During this webinar, we'll walk you through these changes to make sure that you're comfortable with them. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. If you submitted questions with your webinar registration, we've done our best to answer them throughout the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the lower right side of the window. At the end of the webinar, we'll open up the floor for a question and answer session. And during this time, we'll answer all of the questions that you've submitted. I'll be sending you all an email tomorrow that includes a full recording of today's webinar, and that way you can watch it again or share it with your team. Okay, let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover in today's webinar. First, we'll briefly talk about AOBRDs versus ELDs and the 2-year AOBRD grandfather extension. Next, I'll talk to you about how to run DashLink as an ELD. And then we'll dive right into a live demo led by Alex. He's going to show you the new ELD features in the BigRoad web app and mobile app. And then we'll end the webinar by answering your questions. So ELDs and AOBRDs are similar in that they are engine-connected devices that automatically record drive time and vehicle information, producing accurate and automatic logs. Where they really differ, though, is in how much data they record and display. An automatic onboard recording device, or AOBRD, is required to record truck, shipment, and other carrier information, as well as an hours of service summary, duty status changes, vehicle location, drive time, and device malfunctions. With an AOBRD, you still have the ability to edit a number of areas within your logs, such as your driving status, which gives you extra flexibility. As well, your edits are not readily displayed to a DOT officer. An electronic logging device, better known as an ELD, records a lot more information. They must record all the data that was just touched, in addition to recording intermediate driving events, CMV status, so powering on or off or logging in or out, diagnostic data and engine malfunctions, as well as unidentified driving records. With an ELD, you have very limited ability to edit your logs, and all edits are readily displayed if a DOT officer inspects your logs. If you had an AOBRD installed in your vehicle before the December 18th, 2017 deadline, you can choose to continue to use it as an AOBRD until December 16th, 2019. Or you can also choose to switch to an ELD right now. So that decision is completely up to you. However, we recommend that you take advantage of this grandfather clause and keep running DashLink as an AOBRD until December 16th, 2019, because AOBRDs offer you more flexibility than ELDs. However, if you've installed your DashLink on December 18th, 2017 or later, you must install it as an ELD in order to be compliant with the FMCSA's mandate. Well, we recently sent out an email to all of our customers explaining how you can make the switch from running DashLink as an AOBRD to an ELD. We're also going to show you again how to do this during the webinar today. And again, this is only for customers who installed their DashLinks before December 18th, 2017. They can choose to run DashLink as an ELD or an AOBRD. It is very important to know that once you switch a truck from an ELOG or AOBRD to an ELD, you cannot go back. The switch to ELD is permanent, so make sure that you're 100% positive that you want to make the switch. ELD functionality is turned on a truck-by-truck basis, not on a fleet-by-fleet basis. If you're adding new trucks to your fleet and installing DashLinks in them on December 18th, 2017 or later, you must add them as ELD trucks in order to be compliant. If you're pulled over for a roadside inspection, There are some specific things that you need to have in your vehicle in paper copy or have easy access to them online. If you're running a DashLink as an ELD or an AOBRD, you need to have a paper copy or online copy of a user manual and driver card, as well as paper logs for 8 days or 14 if you're pulled over in Canada. You can find our AOBRD user manual and driver card on the BigRoad website under the resources page. Both can be downloaded and either saved to your mobile device or printed in hard copy, whichever you prefer. Right. If you need specific ELD materials, you can find them under the ELD materials page. You can download and print or save the ELD user manual and ELD driver card, or request a laminated copy of the ELD driver card. It's important to remember that if you don't qualify for an exemption to the ELD mandate, you need to have an engine-connected device in your vehicle at this point. If you don't have an engine-connected device in your vehicle, you will receive a documented violation during a roadside inspection and possibly a citation and fine. An IOU note is not enough. You need to physically have the device in your vehicle. I'm going to pass it over to Alex now for the live demo. If you have any questions while he's presenting, remember to type them into the questions bar in your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll do our best to answer them after the demo is complete.
All right. So the first thing we're going to start with we're going to go through all the changes from AOBRD to the ELD options. So we're going to start with the administration side, and we're going to start under the fleet tab here. The first thing we're going to look at is how to turn on ELD for your fleet. So as an office administrator, you would click to the fleet tab and then settings, and then click on the edit option here. Now, when you scroll all the way down, you have all these variety of settings that you can enable for your entire fleet in one go. Down here at the very bottom, you have ELD features and ELD compliance. Now, at this point, we've already gone ahead and marked this one off for us, and you can see that there's no option to go back and uncheck this feature. What this does is it allows you to enable certain vehicles as an ELD vehicle. It will not automatically change every vehicle in your fleet to ELD. All it does is provide the functionality to use an ELD in your truck as opposed to an AOBRD. So once you've checked that off, you can't undo that, but it doesn't mean that your vehicles are all ELDs at this point. The next part that we're going to look at is the ELD readiness report. So along the left-hand side here, we also have our ELD readiness report right there, which you can click on. And it's going to generate a report for your entire fleet and do kind of a check on each stage of it. So which trucks are ready to be switched over to ELD, and it will have a little column here saying ready, yes or no. And as we go through, it'll also do it for drivers and for your entire fleet as a whole. For the drivers, it will go through and it will look for a variety of information, in particular license number, state, so on and so forth. We can see it's also going to highlight its missing information for us. So if we were to go ahead and click on one of these, it will actually take us right into that user since I'm an administrator right now, and I could enter in the missing information here. Excuse me. The next part, back under the fleet tab here, is adding trucks. So if we click on the trucks section, then you can add a truck here. When you're going in and adding a new vehicle, you will be able to give it a truck number or name. So you can either call it truck 001, or you can say John's truck. Throw in the license number, the VIN number will all be required for it to be ELD. You can select your odometer units here, and then you have the option to pick which type of logging system you're going to use. So electronic log is, at this point, not a valid option for most people using the system or doing trucking. AOBRD, as Nicole mentioned, is only viable if you have installed prior to December 18th. So if you're trying to hook it up now, the only option you really have is an ELD option here. So you would need to be able to select that one and fill in all that information. then you also have the VIN or device ID option here to pair your DashLink to. You can use either option, the VIN number or the device ID. Both will track properly. If you decide to use the device ID to match, then you will have to find a code like this on your DashLink and plug it into this box here. Once you're done, you would click Add Truck, and that would add that vehicle to your fleet, ELD ready. The next step is carrier edits. So we're going to click on the Drivers tab here and navigate into myself there. And we can see in here on this Driver Hub page that we have the Edit Log option. And so I can go ahead and click that. It's going to bring me in to where, as a safety manager, I can make edits to this log. So I'm logged on as a different person right now, so I can show you exactly how it would work. If I logged on as myself and went to edit my own logs, it wouldn't necessarily give you the exact scenario of what most people will deal with. So as you scroll down here, we have all of the events that I've already logged for today that we can see in here. Now I'm going to say, okay, I wasn't actually in Sleeper, and I'm going to make an edit here. And once this has loaded, you can notice the difference between AOBRD and ELD here is that I will not be able to change the start and end times at this stage. The only thing I can change is the duty status. So I'm going to change this from Sleeper to just on duty. And I'm going to have to put in a note down here, and I'm just going to say that I had fat thumbs and picked the wrong one by accident. So I can just go ahead and click Save. At which point we can see this little orange bar here along the side is showing me the attempted edit. So most of this stuff right here, it's going to say auto or driver entered or carrier entered. So auto is when the DashLink is making a status change for you. So if your vehicle's in motion or something like that, it will pick that up. If the driver goes in and makes an edit on their own logs, it will indicate it as a driver. And carrier would obviously be in the situation, the safety manager back in the office. So to save this edit, we're going to click on this big orange button up here in the top and say Send Suggestions. And what this does is it will send it as a suggestion to the driver, which they can either accept or reject. It's not an automatic, forced changing of the log because the driver is still responsible for their logs. So it's going to ask for a reason here. I'm just going to say corrections and click Send Suggestions. So we'll see that on the driver's side in a little bit when I go on to that. Also, it's important to note that those notes that I made in here, once it's been accepted, will show up on a roadside as well. Clicking on the dashboard here, we have our variety of graphs that we typically go over. We have an unassigned driving option here. Now, none of our vehicles currently have any unassigned driving, but if that was the case and there was some mileage that was unassigned, you would have a button right here that you would be able to click on and to go from there. Let's see, we're going to click on Julie right now. So in the logs here, just like normal, you would be able to come in and see any of these logs there. We're going to click on January 18th and start going through Julie's logs at this stage. Now, for the ELD versions, you will have some new information provided here as well. We have the engine and engine hours, so it's going to say from how many hours you ended up having your engine on in total, which is an addition over the AOBRD version. We're also going to have auto-recorded events. So like I mentioned, the DashLink will be automatically recording certain events. And so right here we can see DashLink auto-recorded events. And if we click Show Details, it's going to tell us what's going on. So it says log in at this place with this odometer reading at this time. And basically what that means is, okay, that the driver signed into his app. And that way they can see when he started using this, this feature. We also have the View History button up here at the top, which is a new option as well. So clicking on that, it's going to bring us into here where we can see what our current log looks like for the day, and then you can see various event changes here. Now, most of this stuff was driver entered, as you can see here, but it will indicate what edits were made by the driver, by the office staff, anything like that. So you will be able to see all that kind of stuff going on. All right, that pretty much covers it for the administration side of things. There's a couple of changes there, but nothing too major. So we're going to jump right into the driver part of the ELD updates. Now, once we're on this screen, we can see right away, okay, I'm already on duty. I have 13 hours and 5 minutes left. That's wonderful. If you've attended any of our other training sessions or webinars, you'll be pretty familiar with most of this stuff. But something new is this green flag right here. So what this is telling us is that this is a carrier edit. So that edit that I just made, that I said the driver will be able to accept or reject, that's exactly what this is. It's an indicator saying somebody tried to make a change to your log. Do you want to accept it or not? So we're going to click on the daily logs here. And as we scroll down, we can actually see we have our warnings, just like with AOBRD, and then we have our carrier edits version. So if we go ahead and click on that, it's going to take us right in here, and we can see when the edits were made for. And it's going to have this nice green box here that's going to say, okay, where are the edits? And it's going to go through and indicate the various changes that they want to make for you. So if we click on the big green banner there, it's going to show the various alterations here. So this event was edited in nice big white there to make it very clear for the driver, along with the reason and the status change there from what it was. And down here you can see a note from the carrier. So I said corrections, and it's going to say the exact same thing here. I can either choose to accept or reject it. So if I accept these changes, it's going to update my logs appropriately. If I reject them, it will kick back to the administration side, at which point the safety manager will have to go and make some other changes. So that would need some kind of dialogue between the driver and the safety manager about why they rejected that. All right, so that took care of the carrier edits for us. While we're in here, we can also look at the log versus header. So this is a slight change from the older version of the BigRoad app. So this is mostly, the log side is mostly just going to be looking at exactly what the driver's been doing for that day. So it's going to be tracking his hours and his location, all that kind of stuff on this side. The header is more of the general information. So it's going to have your driver name, vehicle carrier, company name, address, all that kind of stuff that generally doesn't change on a daily basis or anything like that. It will have shipping docks and trailers in here, and I'll show you an easy way to change that right from the home screen in a moment. But the log is where most drivers will end up spending the bulk of their time. All right. So we're just going to come back to the main screen here. So for changing your trailer or shipping documentation as you swap loads or trailers, there's a nice simple way that we've added in here with this little triangle right there. So if you click on this triangle, it's going to pop down and show you, okay, where you're currently using trailer 123 and our shipping document is A943. We're going to click on update trailer and shipping info, at which point it's going to bring us into this screen where you can update it as needed. Once you've done that, you can just click done and it will update appropriately for you. So nice, easy, and straightforward. The other big change is personal conveyance and yard move. So previously, yard move in particular would allow you to use that feature for on-duty, off-duty, or sleeper. Now it only functions with an on-duty status. However, the trade-off is that previously you only had 5 miles of driving in any of those 3 statuses, where now you don't have that 5-mile limit. So if we click on here and we go start a yard move, it's going to ask us for a reason for this specialty status. And I'm just going to say trailer shunt. And then we're going to click save. at which point it's now going to show us on-duty yard move here. We can see that there's no box that pops up anymore, like with the AOBRD, where it says you have 5 miles remaining of driving. It's just going to allow you to do this as much or as long as you want. With all that being said, we highly recommend that you don't use this to try and skirt the system, because if you get caught, they're not going to be very happy with that. So when you're done, you're just going to click End Yard Move. It's going to leave you back in on duty there. If you go ahead and click on Begin Personal Use, it's going to again ask you for a note there. So you can type something in, and we'll just say start a break and click Save, at which point it's going to show as off-duty personal, and then you can function exactly the same way as yard move. You can drive around as needed. It is legally required that you are not under dispatch while you are using off-duty personal mode. And what that also means is that you can't have a trailer or company equipment hooked for you. You're not supposed to be responsible for company product or anything like that to be able to use it legally. When you're done, you click End Personal Use, and it just leaves you in the off-duty status there. All right, so under daily logs here and view logs, we're just going to come into here today and kind of go over the editing option as well. So if I click on my first status here, we can see it still highlights in blue and will still come up with the edit button. But when I go in there, I can change very little in here at this point anymore. I would have to put in a note to make any changes. And I can really only change my duty status at this point. So I can say I was on duty, but there was drive time automatically recorded for some of this stuff. So I can click off duty there, but the dash link will pick up any of that stuff, and it won't allow, if you are actually moving your vehicle, it won't allow you to make some of those changes for you. So it's really just a status change, just like on the administration side under the ELD stuff there. There's no more time limit of 24 hours for drivers though, so you can go back several days if you need to make some kind of correction, which is kind of a difference over the AOBRD option. And it will also show all the edits that you've made on a roadside as well, which is partially why we recommend staying with AOBRD if you can. So for the dash link auto-recorded events from a driver perspective, we can see that we have one right here. And if you click on that drop down, it's going to pop down and show us our specialty driving mode. And it will just kind of record from there. So this is where you'd be able to come and look at some of that stuff. And you can scroll through as needed depending on what's going on here. So we can see where we changed from yard move. And we cleared the yard move, and then we started personal conveyance all within about a minute there. The other big difference will be roadside inspections. So to navigate to that, you'll click on Daily Logs here, and then Inspect Logs. So you'll select whichever country you are being inspected in. And then you have several options here. Now the new one over the AOBRD option is the Send to FMCSA. Now this is just going to send over a detailed list of their logs to the FMCSA directly. And that way they would have those logs to inspect as they need. But the other differences in here will be through the Inspect on Screen option. So if you hand this over to the inspector, this is exactly what they're going to see. Very typical of the AOBRD option. So if we go to Inspect Logs here, and today we can come through and we can see it looks a little bit different than what some previous sessions have covered with you. So you can have the inspector see the auto-recorded events in here, so it will notate yard move there and your reason. It will go through here and make any of these changes in here as well. So we can see here's the carrier edit that happened, and it says origin carrier, so then they know that the company made this correction to your logs and the reason why they made that correction as well. And that pretty much is the differences ELD over the AOBRD version. At this point, we are going to be looking at any questions that may have come in and trying to answer as many of those as possible.
Sorry, we're just looking through some of the questions now. Bear with us.
All right, we have a question from Scott here. It says, as the safety manager, when I edit a driver log, I'm not seeing the send suggestions. I see confirmed changes. Why hasn't that updated on our program? So if you are still using the AOBRD version and as opposed to an ELD version of the system, it will appear differently for you. That also applies for a truck. So if you are using even an AOBRD truck and you've upgraded your fleet to ELD, but almost none of your trucks use that, it will still function the edit logs as an AOBRD option. So again, that first step that I mentioned at the beginning, it will only grant the fleet the option to use ELD. It won't change anything automatically to ELD for you. So Sharon asks, does Yard Move have a timer because they are at the port, not even going close to 5 miles or 3 miles an hour, but it kicks off? So the AOBRD version of Yard Move has a 5-mile limit on it, mostly as just a restriction required from the DOT because the logs won't show as much information to an inspector. So the ELD version does away with the timer because it's going to be showing exactly how long you were doing Yard Move for, and then the inspector can judge if that was an appropriate use of Yard Move. So JD says, how often is the ELD ping when driving? So there's different stages that it will check in at. Every hour it will automatically send an update, whether there's been a status change or not. So if you've been driving for like 3 hours, it's automatically going to ping every hour. Or even if you're just sitting there, not doing anything. And then if it's changing location or something like that, it's going to be sending that information as well. It's typically about every 30 to 60 seconds, depending on cell coverage and that kind of stuff. So we have a question saying, if I'm having trouble linking my DashLink device with the app, what do I do? Typically, the first steps that support will ask you is to try linking it through the VIN or the device ID. Try both of those, and if that doesn't work, another commonly caused issue is that some drivers will try to link the DashLink through the Bluetooth panel right on the tablet or phone itself, rather than using it through the Bluetooth option in BigRoad. So you'll need to make sure that your Bluetooth is on and that you're doing it through the BigRoad system, not just pairing like you would a Bluetooth headset or something like that. So we have a question saying, how does the inspector know that you have been grandfathered in on the AOBRD? At this point, if an inspector, like a roadside inspector, were to pull you over, they wouldn't really know if you have appropriate logs for that time limit. So let's say if you're in the US and you get pulled over and you have your 7 days plus today, and they all show as AOBRD, they would not be aware of when you installed that AOBRD prior to that. If you had an audit, though, they would be able to see the last 6 months. So let's say if somebody got audited in March, they would be able to go back and see when you started using that device. And then you can get into a little bit of hot water that way.
So I think Michael is asking, would you please repeat the information needed when being pulled over for the ELD system and differences? So if you're being pulled over for a roadside inspection and you're using an ELD, you can go to the ELD materials page on the BigRoad website and download and print or save the ELD user manual and ELD driver card, or request a laminated copy of the driver card. And you'll also need that 8 days of paper logs, or 14 days if you're getting pulled over in Canada. We also have a driver card and a user manual for the AOBRD, which you would need if you were running with AOBRD. So that should just answer that one.
All right, so we have a question from Susan saying, under roadside inspection risk, I have a violation showing for a driver which says shipping document numbers are required. What would the shipping document be? It says we are from Canada to US shipment. Would that be a PARS number? So typically what that means is it's a bill of lading number that you would plug into the shipping document number there. If you have the paper copy of the bill of lading as well, that would also function upon inspection. But you probably want to enter it into the device in case, it's like 3 days later or something that you get pulled over for roadside, so that you still have it on file for the inspector. All right, so we have a question from Victor. It says, also to change from AOBRD to ELD, do we need to update our dash link, or is it as simple as changing the feature on our BigRoad profile? So all you need to do, there's nothing you really need to change on the dash link. They are all capable of both AOBRD and ELD at this point. It's just that toggle on the ELD option under the fleet settings. And then you'd have to go truck by truck and turn on the ELD for those vehicles as well. And that would be enough to, you could have one truck running ELD and the rest all is AOBRD until you get comfortable with it. It's not an all or nothing option. Right. Okay. Yep. All right. We have a follow-up question. It says, on your last question, what hot water? So in particular for if you were to be audited, let's say in March, again, using that same example, and you installed an AOBRD now, which is past the grandfather date, the auditor is going to be able to figure that out. They're going to look at your logs and they're going to be able to see, okay, you had no AOBRD options prior to December 18th, and all of your logs started with AOBRD mid-January, and they're going to figure out that you must have acquired that equipment after the grandfather period, at which point then you're going to get slapped with some fines or whatever else, other tools that they have at their disposal.
You could also be taken out of service for not having the proper engine connected compliance solution there.
All right, we have a question from Susan saying, as an administrator, I need info for IFTA reporting on quarterly. Where do I get that info from BigRoad Online? So that would be under the administration portal online, and there's a big tab along the top that says reports. You can run a report on whatever time range that you need for vehicle mileage and driver hours and mileage. And that way you can generate the bulk of your IFTA reporting. We don't cover the fuel expense part of it, obviously.
So Melissa's asking, do we need to put an AOBRD or an ELD in when a new truck comes on and it's a new hire? So you can only use an AOBRD in existing trucks. You can't install new AOBRDs past December 18th, 2017. So if you're putting a a device into a new truck for a new hire, it needs to be an ELD going forward. This question is from JD asking the 8 days of paper logs are blank. Is that correct? Yes, you need to have blank 8 days or 14 if you're driving in Canada again. And that's in case a device breaks down, you have a backup of paper logs to complete your records of duty status. I have a question here from Richard. I'm not totally sure if I understand it. It's saying, I forgot something, ELD, is it phone or beside the phone? You could mean like what is the ELD device? So it has to be an engine connected device, and ours is connected to Bluetooth to the app on your phone, so you run them together. So a mobile phone alone is not enough to be in compliance. You need something engine connected that's automatically recording your hours. Correct me if I'm wrong in understanding your question.
So a question from Ryan saying, so the drivers need to run a paper log at the same time as their ELD. This is not the case. The paper logs are only in case of device malfunctions. It's more as a backup system, and you have the 8-day window to get that system replaced if there can't be corrected by support trouble, through troubleshooting or something like that.
So to confirm, Michael, an AOBRD can be used if you've installed it prior to December 18th until December 16th, 2019. And after that, you do have to use an ELD. I think this is a follow-up to the last question from Melissa. So if our fleet is AOBRD and we have been hiring new owner-operators, do they need to be AOBRD or ELD on BigRoad? If you're hiring new people and these are going into new trucks, then they need to be ELDs. If it's a truck-by-truck basis, not a driver-by-driver basis. So if you have an AOBRD installed in a truck, your driver can use that truck as an AOBRD, but if you're getting a new truck with your new drivers, then that has to be an ELD. So all new trucks past December 18th need ELDs installed.
We have a question from Richard saying why the system doesn't advise us when we're over hours. Typically, the system should be advising you that you're over hours. It could be a setting malfunction or something like that. Generally, how it should be popping up is your time when you're at full time will be displaying as green and saying something like 14 hours remaining or 11 hours driving. It will transition to yellow as you start getting around the 50% remaining mark. And then when you're about 10, 20% left of your time, it should switch to red. After that, it's going to be kind of prompting you, saying, hey, you're over your hours. It's not going to have anything really flashing on the screen, though. It's just going to be showing you in colors. If there's something else going on where it's not prompting you and you found out that you are over hours, I'd give our support team a call and have them take a look at it for you.
So the next question is from Sierra, asking, are ELDs transferable between trucks? So our DashLink is a plug-and-play device. So as long as you have the right connector cables, you can switch it between trucks. The only thing that you need to make sure of is that your drivers are signing into the correct truck, the correct ELD when they start their shifts, and also that you have enough licenses for the amount of drivers that you have. Am I missing anything?
All right, so we have a question from Melissa saying, so what happens if I put them in as AOBRDs instead? What happens if I change it now? If you accidentally put them in as an AOBRD, you can upgrade them to ELD now without really too much issue. Probably the best course of action, though, would be to make a note when you switch over to the ELD from AOBRD. So let's say you installed it as AOBRD a week ago and you realize now that it should actually be ELD, make a note at this point saying mistakenly installed in this way as AOBRD, but is now switched over to ELD, and that way it's all clear for an audit or an inspector. Most of the time, they're going to be looking for people trying to actively get around the rules. So if you're being very clear with it, they are more likely to be understanding. We have a question from Michael saying, will this shut down the truck if over hours? No, the system does not have a kill switch in it or anything like that. All it does is track your hours and pull various information from your truck. So like your odometer reading, all that stuff. It doesn't send any information into your truck itself. It's just taking some out of it. That's all. We have a question from Michaels asking, we have installed these in our pickups for tracking reasons and for time hour reasons. Is there a way to toggle between DOT driving and non-DOT driving? There isn't really a way to do this. The only option that I could advise would be, if you're using it for personal use, would be to track on the BigRoad app that you are using personal conveyance or something like that. It would mark as off duty on your logs, but would still track the odometer reading. That way you won't have an error pop up later showing that the vehicle was used but wasn't signed into the app. So a follow-up from Melissa about where would I make that note at. You could make a note right on the log itself for like the last one before you switch over to ELD or something like that. I would imagine that you're probably the safety manager, so you could put a little tag for each one in there saying it was mistakenly added as an AOBRD or something like that.
So the next question is from Brandy. If our drivers do not have a commercial driver's license, do they need to use the electronic log if they were not filling out the paper logs originally? Well, generally this only applies to commercial motor vehicle drivers who are currently required to produce a record of duty status. If you're not currently required to produce a record of duty status, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to need an ELD. However, we do have a lot of resources on our blogs that go over the full list of ELD exemptions. I can make sure that you get that link in an email after this if you want to double check.
So a question from Chris. If one truck has multiple drivers, each driver must have the BigRoad app downloaded to log their hours, right? Yes, that is correct. You can use a truck for an entire 24-hour stretch if you want. Obviously, you would not be able to have a single driver use it for that time. So if you had it being shared amongst drivers, they would each have to have their own login. But once driver A is done, he can deselect the vehicle and sign out. And then driver B can sign in and select that vehicle and then continue on with it, leaving minimal downtime for that vehicle. So a question from Sierra. The license number required in the online system, is that the driver's license number or the ELD or DashLink license number? So that would be the driver's license number to be ELD compliant.
So it looks like that's it for questions. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. After the webinar, you're going to see a short survey pop up on your screen. So please take a moment to fill that out. Your feedback will help us to ensure that future webinars are even better. Thanks again for your time and have a good rest of your day.